Hi there, my name is Dr. Katie Saint, and this video is about anger. So, all of us feel angry from time to time, and a lot of people feel like that emotion is not okay. And that's probably because we've seen people get in a lot of trouble for their anger. So, what I want to talk about today is how to handle our anger. Sometimes anger is actually helpful. So, when we get mad, it motivates us to take action. And if we didn't get mad, we would maybe be more apathetic about it and just kind of like, meh, whatever. So, anger can be a good thing, but it also gets us into trouble sometimes. So, to start with, I want you to pause the video and just talk with whoever you're with about how often you get mad and how, like, what triggers it the most. So, different things frustrate different people. You know, some people cannot stand the sound of other people chewing, and that just makes them irate. Other people get really mad if people are too loud. You know, a lot of people get mad if you call them names. You know, so what are triggers that you experience in your everyday life that really make you frustrated, annoyed, angry? So go ahead and pause the video and just talk about that. What kind of things make you mad? How often are you getting mad? And then come on back. All right. The next thing I want to look at is how often you make other people mad. That's a part of the equation that we often don't think about. We see how our family members or our friends really frustrate us, but oftentimes we don't take the time to look at ourselves to see what we did to contribute to it. So sometimes we push people's buttons. And what I mean by that is we do things on purpose to get a reaction out of them. And this sometimes causes fights. So I want you to take some time to think about, when was the last time you made someone mad or frustrated or annoyed? What did you do to frustrate them? And did you do anything to fix it? So if we can be more aware of what frustrates the people we care about, we can reduce conflict. Most people don't like conflict, but we will all be exposed to it at different points in our life. If we can avoid it by being more aware of how our actions affect other people, then we're going to have less conflict. So go ahead, pause the video, and talk through, when was the last time you made someone mad? What sort of behaviors frustrate people or annoy people that you do on a regular basis? If you think your answer is, I never annoy people, I never make people mad, it's just not true. We all do. As much as we don't want to, it happens to all of us. So there's no shame in admitting it. So go ahead and pause the video and talk through that. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between being assertive and bossy. So as I talked about in the beginning of the video, anger is helpful. It's not a bad emotion, but we can get in trouble with it. So if you think of being assertive and being bossy as a spectrum, sometimes when we're just learning how to be assertive, it comes across as bossy. So if I tell you that we're going to play this way and I'm not negotiating and you have to listen to me, that's not assertive, that's bossy. You know, being assertive is respectful, and being assertive, you stand your ground, but you communicate it in a good tone of voice, and you consider the other person's perspective, but you clearly communicate your boundary. Where being bossy, you're not considering all the variables, you're being disrespectful. So what I want you to do right now is talk with whoever you're with about different examples. Try to come up with 5 examples of each, of being bossy versus being assertive. And then I want you to role play one of each. Do a good example and then of being assertive, And then do the bad example of being bossy so you can clearly see the difference. Because that's a skill that when a lot of people are learning it, it's hard for them to get it right. So we need to practice. Because if we're not super comfortable with being assertive, sometimes we swing to the end of being bossy because we're just like, okay, I'm going to do it, here I go. And it just comes off a little bit too bossy. So it takes practice, and that's okay. So go ahead and practice right now with whoever you're with, being assertive and then being bossy, and 5 examples of each. All right, and then come on back. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is, okay, you have a situation that happens and you're mad. And chances are whatever happened, it's valid for you to be mad. Like whatever happened was frustrating. So sometimes though, when we respond to anger, we make it worse. So somebody calls you a name, that's rude. So obviously you're going to be mad. And a lot of people's gut reaction is to retaliate back. How dare you call me that name? You're a blah, blah, blah. You know, it's very common for people to do that, or to get in somebody's face and be like, what'd you say? But that escalates the conflict. So what can you do to de-escalate conflict? Because when we respond to anger with yelling back, or if someone mistreats us and then we mistreat them back, we only make it worse. So I want you to think of a situation where it was valid for you to be mad. Somebody did something really frustrating. And then I want you to brainstorm what you could have done to calm things down. What could you do where you're not a pushover? Because I don't want you to be a pushover either. It's okay to be assertive. But I don't want you to escalate it and make it worse and get yourself in trouble. So go ahead and reflect on that. Think of a time that it was valid for you to be mad, and analyze, did my actions make it worse? Did I actually screw myself over and get myself into more trouble because of how I reacted to somebody doing something wrong? A lot of times we can respond in a way by being assertive and respectful instead of matching somebody else's poor behavior. And then we don't get in trouble. So this is really, really important. Adults and kids both get into a lot of trouble with our anger. So we have to pause and think before we react, or we will screw ourselves over. People end relationships because of anger. People go to jail because of anger. You know, handling your anger is a big deal. And an important step to handling your anger is to give yourself that half a second to think about, okay, how can I respond to this in a way that will not make things worse? So go ahead and pause the video. Try and think of a real life example that you've been in where you were totally valid to be frustrated, to be mad. And then talk through what you could do that would have made the situation better, not worse, in a way that you weren't a doormat, but you were assertive. All right, so pause the video and then come on back. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is just what you need to do to let things go. Because sometimes we get mad and it just doesn't serve us in any way. Like, we shouldn't be assertive. We should just let it go. For example, sometimes I get annoyed when the shower curtain is left open. But that's seriously no big deal. That shouldn't be something that annoys me. So that's something I need to work on, just letting go. I shouldn't say anything about it. I shouldn't correct people for it. I can shut it myself if that really bothers me. So some things we absolutely just should let go and not be mad about. Like, it's okay if you have that initial response, but we shouldn't act on that anger. So what are some other examples of this? Can you think of some some examples in your own life where it really annoys you to hear this, or when someone does this, or I hate their tone of voice, or, like, can you think of examples like that that just irritate you, but really you should let it go? You shouldn't act on it, and you should just go about your life and not say anything. So go ahead and talk about that. Pause the video and also talk about what strategies you're going to use to let that go. Do you need to take deep breaths? Do you need to distract yourself with a different activity? What sort of things are you going to do to make sure that you can let those things go instead of letting your anger build about that thing that's really not a big deal? All right, so guys, now that you're done talking about that, the last thing I want to talk about is just making sure you evaluate on a daily basis where you're at with your anger. Because if we're angry too often, that could be an indication that something else is going on inside of us. We might be frustrated all the time. And if that's the case, maybe there's more stuff going on that you need to talk about. When we talk about what frustrates us and the things that make us mad, it's easier to let go. So maybe you have stuff building up that you need to talk about to help process your emotions. A lot of times when we stuff things and we don't talk about it, it just builds and builds and builds, and then we blow up. And so that's not good for us, and that's where we make poor choices sometimes. So what I'd like you to do is just kind of reflect on that. If you're talking about your stress and your frustrations enough so that you don't eventually blow your lid and get really angry over small things. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.